Episode 63 of the Fire Coaches podcast. A real special guest tonight because we have the Dirt King, Adam Nelson, who runs HoopDirt, site that I think many college basketball coaches, if you're on the men's side, even on the women's side, has been around for a while now, and a place that I think everybody visits, especially this time of the year. So being April, really special time for Adam to jump on. He spent, I believe, over 20 some years in the coaching world between Division I stops, Division III stops, head jobs, assistant jobs, all of that. So, Adam, I really can't appreciate, especially during this time of year, like I said, you jumping on the podcast here.
Yeah, no, Marcus, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to hang out with you for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to early mid 90s, your first few years, Eddie Fogler at South Carolina, and then the Boston College days as well with Jim O'Brien. Like what kind of got you into that path of where you wanted to get into coaching at such a young age?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't know. It's one of those things like I just always wanted to be a coach, right? And I was never good enough to play at that high major level, but I knew I was, I wanted to be involved. So like you said, I went down to the University of South Carolina, had a great experience with Eddie Fogler, phenomenal coach. He actually wasn't there my first year. Another guy, Steve Newton, was there, got fired, so I got to kind of see that whole process.
Yeah.
When Coach Fogler came in, he came in from Vanderbilt, where he was the national coach of the year. And you know what, to be honest, it was a lot different back then, for like a young guy like me. If you look now, all these high major staffs have, 10 or 12 operations types guys. They have, 15 managers. It's crazy, right? But back then, 93, 94, you had, three assistants. You're lucky if you had like an ops guy and then like three managers. So like for me as like a 19-year-old kid, like I'm on the court doing everything. I'm jumping in drills, I'm doing everything. I'm watching film with the coaches in practice. So that's really kind of what got me like even more like amped up like at the high major level. Like, I'm 19 years old in the SEC, like doing everything. Like we're flying private. It's just an amazing, amazing experience. And that's kind of what I guess solidified my want to coach.
Yeah, I guess going through that firing process, being on a staff member, student manager, did that like shock you, or was it just kind of like, hey, like this is just kind of is what it is? Like I kind of expected this at some point if this is what my career is going to be.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'll tell you what, I think I was really, and maybe this is deep down kind of what started Hoop Dirt. Again, 19-year-old kid. So not only did Steve Newton, the head coach, get fired, so I was able to kind of see that. And I don't know if I don't remember, I don't know if we knew it was coming or not. But the crazy thing was Bobby Cremins, who was a South Carolina alum, was head coach at Georgia Tech at the time. Bobby Cremins actually accepted the job. He was on campus for 3 days. So
Okay.
I worked with Bobby Cremins for 3 days. Like I got him Burger King. We hung out. I came back in the office, the third morning, and the administrative assistant, this woman Cheryl, she's sitting at the front desk. She looked at me like her face was pale. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Bobby's gone." What do you mean Bobby's gone? What does that mean? I mean, his wife came and got him and drove him back to Atlanta, and it kind of started the search all over again. So just again seeing that from a young age, like the the craziness of a Division I search and kind of what happened. And yeah, maybe that kind of set the table for everything that's happened since. I don't know.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I do think that there's some background there, right? Like obviously so many things in life are shaped by experiences at young ages. And if you see all that instantly at 19, 20 years old, I mean, how do you not kind of have an understanding more so than others? So after graduation, I believe you get into it and Curry College was your first stop. Division III, you end up working your way up to associate head coach. Going opposite Division I to Division III, for you, was it really just, I just want to get in the game and work and become full time? Or was it really like, I want to get into this and eventually get back to the highest level?
Yeah, it was strange. I don't think I knew at the time, and I think I probably would have done it a little differently. It was a strange time. So after I left South Carolina, I went to Boston College for 2 years and finished up there. Had a great experience with Jim O'Brien. I'm a local Boston guy. It just made more sense for me to be up here. And yeah, I was fortunate. Um, Obi and those guys knew this young kid named Pat Scarry. Scarry was
Mm.
26 years old, just got the Curry job. I'm 22, and they're like, "Hey, go work for him. You're going to learn a ton." And I fought it. Like the first time I met Pat, I actually didn't. I turned it down. I said, "No, I'm good." Like I didn't want to be a Division III coach,
Sure.
because of what I had no experience there. I didn't know what it was all about. But in the end, it was actually the best decision I ever made. Pat and I spent 2 years working together at Curry. He was 26, I was 22. Man, we ran all over New England and literally recruited. If you could dribble a basketball a little bit, we recruited you. Recruited you. I mean, our recruiting list
How,
was absurd.
how many do you think were on that list? I mean, to start roughly, like, I mean, and then obviously add on, but how many do you think?
Oh, I mean, we would start every something with 5, 6, 700. I mean, it
Sure.
was obscene the size of our list, and then just the amount of campus visits. Like we wanted, 100 plus campus visits. Like it was crazy what we did there. Like
And you
that
guys were young and had a ton of energy, and you're like, "We're just gonna run at this," right? I mean,
exactly, and we loved it. I mean, we were out every night. I mean, I remember really early on, like, and again, I spent 2 years with Pat, and it might have been, sometime November, kind of like, the season had kind of started, and I got in the office, and Pat said, "What'd you do last night?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I was, with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, hung out, went to dinner, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Cool." And he looked at me, he's like, "Why didn't you make recruiting calls?" And just got all over me, like, "Why? You didn't do blah blah blah." I'm like, "Oh crap. Okay, you're right. My bad." Grind, baby, grind. And that's, but again, for me, for a young guy, like, it was hard at the time. I mean, it was not always like a happy time there because we worked so hard, but it kind of set the tone for like how you need to like do stuff. And I learned a lot. I mean, it wasn't easy, but I learned so much from Pat, and I was so thankful to be able to work for him. And today, to this day, I mean, we still text weekly. He's still, one of my closest friends. So
yeah, no, I love hearing those early stories, right? I mean, because everybody that's been on this pod or has gone through it, I think you mentioned actually in an earlier podcast I had listened to about working your way up, and you get like $5,000, and you're like you made it, right? Like you've taken that next step, and like it's so different than other professions where making 5,000 in hoops or a college coaching job is kind of like making 65,000 in a regular business job. In today's world, it's like you've kind of solidified yourself, and which again is kind of sick to describe it to people, but that's just reality, right?
yeah, no, right. People don't understand it, and it is right. It is so hard to get in this business, and even even back then, even now, it's with bigger staffs at the Division 1 level, it doesn't matter. It's still as hard. So yeah, anytime you can kind of get in and then start getting paid, like yeah, my first year at Curry with Pat, I got paid for a bunch of random things. I didn't get paid for basketball at all. I was like the assistant lacrosse coach too to get me some money, sports information director for a little bit. I did a bunch of other things. But that second year, wow, then I started getting paid to be the assistant coach. Right. And I who knows what I made. It wasn't, yeah, 5, 6 grand for the year doing a bunch of stuff. But I was like, wow, I'm getting paid to coach basketball. This is amazing. And even, like that first year to kind of justify it, I would substitute teach a little bit. And then that second year, I was like, no, no, it takes too much of my time. I can't substitute teach. I got to be here. Like,
Yeah.
so, people don't understand like how nuts guys are to get in this business. But again, you know what? I would do it all over again.
Yeah, and just to kind of give our listeners a little bit of a description if they're not familiar with the East Coast, because obviously there's so many small colleges, not to mention colleges in general. But I mean, every kid that you're going after, I mean, was it even back then? Obviously, again, we're looking back where obviously there wasn't the social media and the different stuff that there is access wise today. But were you able to still find rocks under the radar with how many Division threes and other colleges that were kind of out there?
Yeah, we definitely did. I mean, you're right. Well, and we were fortunate to be at a school like Curry where you could get guys in.
Sure.
So we were recruit a lot of guys that people didn't recruit. But yeah, you could definitely find guys. And when I still think about it, Phil Rowe, who's the former head coach at University of New Hampshire, when Pat and I were at Curry, Phil was actually the head coach at Keene State, and he had
Yep.
just got a job as well. And Phil and Pat were friends, and I got to know Phil really well, and Phil and I are still friends. But Curry and Keene State, like we recruited everybody, like Pat and Phil. It was nuts, So it's like, and they were kind of recruiting the same type of kids. Any kind of kid we would find, we'd show up to a gym and be like, "Ah, great, Keene State's here." So
Yeah.
yeah, so many colleges up here. No, it's crazy. I mean, you're battling everybody, and as like Division 3, it's so much different than Division 1 and 2. You have no quiet period, dead period, live. Like you got to be out. Like there are no, especially back then in the summer, you're at a summer league every night. Like there's
Right.
no, it's a wild west. You got to go get guys.
Yep, I've always said it's the greatest thing and the worst thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't always be out, but you don't necessarily always have to be, but you feel like you can and should. From there, you make the jump back in Division 1. You get to Holy Cross, you get to Northeastern. Getting back in and kind of seeing, and again, I know at a younger age, like you had mentioned, being at Curry and really kind of grinding, but getting into Division 1, going through those experiences at both Holy Cross and Northeastern, did you have a decision at that point? Because after those years, you kind of come back to the Division 3 world and become a head coach at three different institutions. Was a D1 taste of something that it was kind of like, I want to be D3, or is it just something that just didn't work out and wasn't necessarily your path?
Yeah, it's something that didn't work for a couple reasons. And it's funny, we're on the Fired Coaches podcast. I mean, that's what happened. So, I spent a year at Holy Cross, and I loved Holy Cross. What a great school, unbelievable place. You know, I still think it's one of my favorite stops along the way.
And that's
Um,
Patriot League, right?
really, great league, great travel, great gyms. Like, it was really like a cool place. But I had taken the job kind of knowing that our head coach had 1 year left on his contract and was probably not being renewed. But it's like one of those things, hey, you have the chance to get. And a lot of guys I talked to said, like, you got to get back to that. If you're at that level, like it's easier to be at that level when you're there and to stay. So I took it kind of figuring we'd get fired. I mean, I still lived in the Boston area and commuted, an hour plus every day to Worcester, kind of knowing what was happening. Yeah, and we got fired, but it was a great experience. Then I was able to parlay that into, a job at Northeastern right after that. So it worked. And kind of oddly enough, Scary was at Northeastern. He had left Curry and gone to Northeastern. So it kind of made it a little bit easier for me to get on staff there. But that's kind of where you know, I kind of think back on my career, maybe should have made a different decision then because same situation where when I got the Northeastern job, we knew we had a year or two left. Like it wasn't going to be a long thing. And then um, after that first year, and first of all, we had an all-star staff. I mean, that staff my year at Northeastern, it was me, Scary, Charlton Young, who's now at Miami. He was, been in Missouri, head coach at Georgia Southern, and Jay Young, who was the head coach at
Oh,
Fairfield,
yep.
at Rutgers. So, the four of us, we had like an amazing staff. But it was one of those things right after that season ended, all three of those guys left. So it left me there with our head coach, who I knew kind of had another year left, and I was about to get promoted. It was not the year I was looking forward to. So I had an opportunity to take a head job, Division III Becker College at 26 years old, maybe one of the youngest Division III head coaches in the country, one of the youngest head coaches in the country. So I took it. Where again, I'm happy I did, and I'm happy everything worked out. But in hindsight, it's probably one of those things where a lot of guys told me, once you leave that level, really is hard to get back. And
Yeah.
become a Division III head coach. It's different. I mean, just recruiting without scholarships is different. The connections you make, are different. I mean, even back then, like, we had like true film exchange. So like when I was at Northeastern, BU was 15 minutes down the road. Well, Orlando Vandross, who became a longtime assistant in Virginia, Orlando was like in my spot at BU. And after every game, we, hit record on the VHS, the VCR things, and we would meet each other halfway after every game.
Yeah.
But again, that's the connections you make. So it's you
Right.
staying at that level. So, but you know what? I guess I had the opportunity at Division III school, Becker College, and took the head job there.
No, that's awesome. My first 2 years, 08, 09, and 9, 10, was still it was the DVD version, right? But you had that multi-disc layer where you were burning stuff and then meeting coaches. And, if you didn't meet coaches at the right time, I mean, just, I was a coach in the first year, I coached in the WIAC, so Division III, great league. And I remember there were just issues where miscommunication on timing, and then it goes to the league office because nobody can just talk it out themselves and all that stuff. So when you were at Northeastern, were you guys playing in Matthews Arena at that time?
No, we had not moved over there at all. We were in
Okay.
Cabot Gym, which is a tiny, tiny gym. That was a crazy. Yeah, they didn't really start using Matthews full time until they got out of the American East
Okay.
and went to Neil, and that's when they got out of Cabot and really started using Matthews, which they have since knocked down.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that happen recently, and I always like just looked at enjoying gyms and being in many in my day. It was I've run across some YouTube videos where people kind of put up like the Palestra, right, and Hinkle and all that stuff. And Matthews Arena always seemed to be an odd one. I'm like, what's Matthews Arena? And then found out that the Bruins and the Celtics played there at one time, and obviously the hockey teams and all that stuff. So yeah, very interesting. Becker, Newbury, Suffolk, all those three head jobs, all Division III. um what was kind of the mode in terms of moving from those? And did you feel like taking each step was kind of a step in the right direction for you to continue to grow, obviously, as a coach?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think they definitely were. I think Becker and Newbury, which have both since closed. I guess I'm a jinx. They're both very similar schools. You're able, and they reminded me of Curry a little bit, which is why I liked them because you could get guys in. They
Sure.
were horrible. You get guys in. We had
I mean, they were like true enrollment driven type institutions, kind of
absolutely
thing.
like,
Yeah.
they wanted right, and
Yeah.
I mean, we were when I was at Newbury, my first year there, I come a week into class, we were still getting guys in. you know, but for me, I was at Becker for 3 years, and we pretty had some ups and downs. We had some really good players, enjoyed it, but again, same thing. I was commuting from Boston to Worcester. Newbury, similar school, 15 minutes from my house. The AD at Newbury called me one random day in the summer. He's like, "Hey, I got a question for you. Do you want to live closer to home?" And I was like, "Oh, Don, yeah." So it was like honestly like lateral move, like really kind of the same schools. Newbury didn't have a gym, which made it a little bit harder, but it was so close to home. And had a good, enjoyed myself there. But then the opportunity at Suffolk came, and just a different animal, right? Better league, full time job. Where Newbury and Becker, I was putting it like at Newbury, I was full time, but I was also working in admissions. Becker, I was
Oh
doing
yeah, yeah, yep.
golf coach, but Suffolk was, full-time basketball coach, you're also the assistant AD, paid well, really good academics, in the middle of Boston where I grew up, so that was like a really good, so that was like that kind of step
Yeah.
that, okay, yeah, all right, this is good.
Absolutely. And you were there 10 years. I mean, kind of give kind of a heads overview of what those 10 years were like building. Like you said, better league. I mean, full time in terms of the coaching job, different stuff you're touching on. Just kind of talking. I looked at your roster, at least in some of your, final years, and obviously you had East Coast guys, but you had a guy from Wisconsin, from the cross area, the Illinois, you had Texas. I mean, it looks like you had some different area kids as well, too.
Yeah, it was a hard place to recruit to, but an easy place to recruit to. So the gym at Suffolk is 6 floors underground, and it literally seats like 50 people.
Oh, wow.
We would be involved with some really good guys, and we bring them on to campus, and they look at the gym and say, like, right away, "No." But it was a good place to recruit to because Boston sells. So like you said, we had, Miami kids, we had Wisconsin kids, Florida, we had them from all over the country
Yep.
because they wanted to come to Boston, and
Atlanta, you get big city type
yep.
kids. We
We
think it's
had
cool.
Chicago kids, right? We had a really good Chicago kid with us. So those kids who wanted Boston, were would overlook the gym, and, like one of our recruiting strategies, especially with the local kids, we'd go downstairs and show them the gym first. This is the gym. And they go, "Oh, this sucks." But then as you walk around campus, we'd actually end the tour. One of our dorms was 31 stories,
Oh, wow.
right with the Boston Common, and it was like a crazy view of Boston. So you kind of end it with that, and
Yeah,
for them
yeah.
about the gym. So that was like that's the way we were recruited there. But it was hard because it was at the time, probably the most expensive school in our league, tuition wise. We also probably had the highest academic standards, and we didn't have a lot of help with admissions and financial aid. So it was a struggle. I mean, it was definitely, we really focused on the full pay kids. That's and at the Division III level, I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
you got to figure that stuff out. So recruiting just became a grind there. I mean, it was a challenge.
Yeah, in terms of, the difference between that and like a Curry or a Newbury and Becker, things like that, what how do you feel looking back now and again, having time to obviously think about things over the years? What was more challenging? Just being able to go get kids wherever where it's like highly enrollment driven, they're looking for the next kid, like you said, classes have started, or is it finding that kid where it's like, hey, we got really strict academic standards, don't have a great gym in terms of what people would view as like what side do you think was more difficult?
Yeah, definitely more challenging at Suffolk finding those. You really had to have a specific type of kid that yes could get in academically, or if they couldn't, yes, we had some play with admissions. If they couldn't get in academically, but would pay the whole bill, yeah, we could get them. But again, those are
Right.
kind of
Needle in a haystack.
exactly, and not necessarily the style we play. I don't know, like not always the best fit. So I mean, it was definitely it was a challenge. Same thing. You had to recruit so many guys because you got guys that'll say they're coming and then they get a financial aid package and they can't. And the difference between like Becker and Newbury where they're getting like full aid. They're getting everything. Um, and especially where I think my favorite Newbury story, we had a kid, a phenomenal player, was between it came down to us and another school, and the other school required SATs and we didn't.
Mm.
He was telling us he was taking the SATs. Remember, he called me on the Saturday morning of the SATs. He's like, "Coach, I didn't go to the SATs." I was like, "You didn't go?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm coming to New York." I was like, "Oh, phenomenal." So like
That's
those are
awesome.
recruited at that level and again, and he was phenomenal. A Boston Globe, all Scholastic out of high school and had a great career. But so I don't know, a little bit more fun recruiting.
Yeah.
There's
No,
Newbury.
absolutely. I feel like you read a Amazon or New York Times bestseller on probably a lot of those stories and different experiences. And I guess, my next thing, I believe you started HoopDirt in '09. Is that roughly right about the
Yeah,
right time?
yeah,
And I was listening again, previous podcast, just where you had some information, how it almost started as kind of a joke in some ways, right around a poker game and stuff like that, which I'll let you touch on. But do you feel like, being all over the place, Division I, Division III, down in South Carolina, up at BC, different stuff like that, do you think like, and again, to your point with Suffolk, recruiting kids from all over to find those kids, do you think that in some ways, like building Hoop Dirt, all these connections you made all over the place really kind of helped you get some traction once you got that launched?
yeah. To be honest, I mean that is the reason we started Hoop Dirt is because like throughout my career, like I tell people all the time, like I was never the best X's and O's guy. I could recruit a little bit, but I was always like that guy that was around. Like I knew everything.
Yeah.
As a young guy going to the Final Four, I loved it. I knew everybody. That's kind of back in the old days where like a lot of the like Division I coaches wouldn't go to the game. They'd go to like a random bar. And I was always the kind of guy running like the pool and collecting the money. I'm paying out, like, I can't even say the names. I'm paying out guys, like, halftime who won the first half, like, this guy, like, wow. Like, that was kinda I really got to know guys, and again, like I said, I think I learned that probably from being in South Carolina as a young kid and then moving on to Boston College and then working with Scary for a couple of years because Scary's one of those guys who knows everybody.
Spiderweb effect, right? Where you're connected to that guy and just
Yeah, exactly, and I think, at a young age, I think I did understand that, and that's kind of what I liked. I liked, and that was the old days before, email and the internet, like, we were on the phone all day. You're calling
yeah.
guys. You're calling coaches to recruit kids, you're calling coaches to check in, it's just you're calling guys. But to your point, that's kind of where HoopDirt started because I had an assistant coach who played for me, and he was my assistant at Suffolk. And we were playing poker one night with my brother-in-law, who's a web designer, and my assistant just said, like, "Hey, coach, you're on the phone all day. All you do is talk to coaches." And he said, "Hey, Jim, you design websites." He's like, "Why don't you design one where coach puts his stuff up there?" And we looked at each other like, "That might work." And again, like, again, over a poker game, and it was, like, kinda not serious, and he built us this, like, one-page website. It was literally a blog, like, you
Yep.
would type it in, and then it would go to the next thing, like, you could just scroll down and read everything, and, like, I remember the first day, like, we were tracking our analytics for, like, 10 people clicked on this and read it, like, "Wow, who are these people? What are they doing?" And then, like, it was 100 people. I remember the first day we got, like, 1,000 views, like, "What is this? Crazy." I mean, it's nuts, and now we're, you know, 10 million views a month. I mean, it's just crazy how it grew over this kinda silly little comment at a poker game.
Yeah, is this like I mean, March, April, is this kind of your peak season? Yeah.
Yeah, this is nuts. I mean, March is obviously really busy because that's when all the Division 1 guys are getting fired and taking jobs, so it is busy. But now this is really like April, May, and even June is where it really starts picking up for us because we don't just do the Division 1 stuff. Y
Which is what makes you unique, right? Because nobody else like, again, I know you've said that before too, though, like, you having that experience and being able to tap into it, like, people just don't cover that, right? Because it's not cool, but there's a market out there. I mean, people care
Right,
about it.
exactly, and that's why, right, like this week, especially, like a lot of the Division 1 is, staffs are getting filled, so it's busy with, who's going where. But realistically, I mean, if you look at the Division 3 numbers right now, there's not a ton. There's 20 plus open jobs. I mean, there's still 15 to 20 that are going to open, because those guys are just still kind of waiting for the semester to end and then they'll make a move. So it's kind of really like it drags out with those, kind of the smaller, same with, the junior college level, NAIA, Division 2. Division 2 is busy early this year, but so it really drags out. March is busy, April is nuts. And then May and June and even, July, because they're still kind of filling those smaller colleges staffs are really, really busy. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun time of year.
At what point did you because again, I know for the longest time it was Hoop Dirt and it was kind of like the no one knew who was running Hoop Dirt or how this popped up and what was going on. And, probably the greatest compliment I ever got, or I felt like it was, because again, like you said, like I was never a great X's and O's guys as an assistant, right? I was never a head coach, 12 years as an assistant, but could recruit like crazy, was in the gym all the time, like just being available, very similar, like you were saying. But the greatest message I ever got from a guy who's Division 3 head coach and been a while and I was very close to, he would text me and be like, "Are you the dirt king? Are you the dirt guy?" And I'm like, "No, I promise you I'm not. I wish I was, but I'm not." So that was probably my greatest compliment I got in coaching. But, what point did you finally release yourself like, "Hey, I'm Adam Nelson. I'm the guy that runs HoopDirt."
It got hard. So, I was doing it. I mean, I think, like you said, started in '09. So it was really like my last 5 or 6 years coaching at Suffolk. And I was doing it because I didn't want people to know who I was because I was still
Yeah.
out there. It made my job hard. But when I kind of made the decision to get out, because Hoop Dirt was really starting to take off, like I just kind of made the decision like, hey, I'm just gonna do this. Like we're giving up basketball for now, and we're gonna do this. And to be honest, it was probably the best decision I ever made because I get so better stuff now because people know who I am and trust me. And even guys who I don't know. Like last night, I got 3 texts from like guys I don't know that well, but I'm a name. They trust me. They know that I really work my hardest to try to take care of coaches and make
Yeah.
sure. I do make sure a lot of stuff doesn't get out. And I tell people all the time, really 60% of the stuff I know gets up on the website. There's a lot of others kind of behind the scenes stuff. I had guys today texting me they're involved in these Division 3 jobs. Please don't mention my name. I got you. No problem. But it's going to get me something in the future. I know that, like when one of those guys gets it, they're going to tell me. But, I really work hard because I've been there. I coached for 20 years. So, I think people kind of knowing my background, knowing who I am, it's just made it much better for me personally to be able to kind of get information and figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. No, that's what I love. And I mean, I know you've said it as well before too, but, you're not trying to be first. You're just trying to be right. and listen, that you said that you're not going to put a head coach's name out there unless they say it's okay for that. So again, I just feel like again in 2026, right? Like I feel like we have less and less credibility or trusted sources or trusted people that you can like really bank on. And to me, like you're going about it the right way. And I've obviously done that for a long time, which again, like you mentioned, builds up that credibility there. Going back in time, do you remember that that blog post that your brother-in-law or whatever had built? Do you remember what the first post was that you had out there?
God, that's a great I wish I could, I really do. I don't know what it would have been. I know I kinda started out with, like, the daily dirt, like 3 or 4 things up at a time, but yeah, it was crazy. And I wish we could, like, go back. I've tried to do, like, these time hop things where you could try to go back,
Yeah, right.
and I can't find. I really do wish I've seen that we have some old screenshots of kind of what it looked like, and it
Sure.
was crazy how awful it was.
I think, if you're, which again, that was probably not the time, but I do think like a throwback Thursday would be really cool. Like looking back in time, if you have some of those screenshots, I think like it'd be interesting, right? To see how far Hoop Dirt's come over the years.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be very cool.
Yeah. Another thing too, can you just kind of speak to the fact of like I love the fact that right you were involved and you're doing the hoop dirt thing, which at the time, like you're obviously focused on your team. But again, you're just so connected in the world, you're like, hey, I'll just put this stuff out there, right? And kind of building like almost this diverse skill set where I think like, I've gone through it, many coaches have, and I think there's a real thing out there of a lot of people that I've worked with from different sports where you have this background. You have the fundraising, the marketing, the recruiting, the coaching, you do all these different things, but then it's time to move on, resign, you get fired, whatever the story is, and you're gonna go like into the business world or something, and you feel like you have nothing to offer because you don't know that you can how you can show this, I guess, to people that are hiring is the best way to put it. So can you kind of talk about just like, how you were, and maybe again, it just kind of happened, with you, but like, can you talk about that? Because I think there's something real about being able to figure out like, hey, if this falls through, or if the end of the road's here and family starts growing or whatever, like I got to have something else here.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it is hard to leave coaching when that's all you kinda know how to do, and don't really have, like a specific skill set to do something else. I think a lot of the things that coaches bring are transferable, but you gotta figure out how to do it. So, for example, like, I knew how to grind. I knew how to work hard, right? So I knew how to get information on the website. Like, I knew how I'll stay up till AM, or I would, dig stuff up and grind it out. But, like, stuff I didn't know the back end of a website. Well, listen, I've learned all that. I can go through the back end of WordPress, and
Yep.
figure stuff. 'Cause I've worked hard to kind of teach myself that.
Sure.
You know, reading the Google Analytics or AdSense or whatever kind of the platforms we use. Like I've gotten really good at kind of figuring out like SEO stuff and the best time to put stuff up, the best time to tweet.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing. Like is learning whatever you're doing next is really kind of getting yourself involved in learning it. And so, I used to tell people, I think early on, especially when I came out, like I would always kind of maybe make spelling mistakes, do stupid stuff. And I'd say, I'm a coach, I'm not a writer. But my attitude's changed. Like I work my ass off to actually make sure my stuff is like really good. Like this is
Yep.
what I do. So I've worked hard to make sure stuff like is formatted right. I proofread it as much as I can. Sometimes it gets fast and it's hard, but I try, so
But
like,
you care about it, right? Like you want it to be the best it can be.
well, that's exactly it. I do. I want it to be really good. We have, a guy who puts our jobs up for us, and sometimes they're not formatted right. I'm like, "Well, this sucks." Like, and it's like, "Oh, who cares?" Well, I care. I
Yep.
actually care. So you just kinda learn you kinda take some of the skills you have, like the work ethic and the knowledge, but then you kinda you have to teach yourself that new kinda whatever you're in, and
Yep.
that's kinda where I feel like, I think I've learned this side of it. Like recruiting is similar to sales. But yes, we do sell ads and that's how we kind of make money. And, we sell jobs and it's just kind of finding the sweet spot on a price point for a job. Like that's, kind of using those. So I'm not recruiting a player, but I'm recruiting the school to maybe, advertise with us.
No, no, that's real. And I think like, again, I'm actually starting a newsletter for like the third time, with the podcast here. And it's, I started on Beehive and I had done some stuff on Substack, and Beehive's actually a lot more challenging. And I'm a tech guy. I consider myself one. I've actually built websites with WordPress, and it took me forever because again, the back end is so different than the Wix and the Weebly's and the either easier ones that just kind of like drag and drop stuff. But I think like, again, when you do that stuff, whether you end up using it or not, like that's all transferable stuff. And I think there's a part of just kind of growing, right? Where you're like teaching yourself new things and just like kind of humbling yourself, right? Like it's a frustration. Like, are you just going to give up and just say, well, forget it? Or are you going to get through it and learn it, like you said, with Google AdSense and analytics and all that different stuff? So that's very cool. In terms of like timelines and putting stuff up, have you changed it all where when you were coaching or even like in the last, 5 years or so, has it changed at all from like getting crazy Division 1 news and having to get it up right away? Or have you got it to more of a point where it's like, if I get something at 11:30 or midnight, like I'm just letting the phone go and I'll get to it in the morning. Like, have you changed that at all? Or is it still kind of like when that stuff comes in, if it's big, like it's got to go now?
Yeah, no, I haven't changed. It's still big. It's I had a text last night from a coach. He's like, "Hey, is it too late?" It was like 1:30. "Oh, I'm up working on something right now. It's not too late, I promise." Like, this
Yeah,
time of year, like, it doesn't matter. This time of year, like, all bets are off, like, and I think what I try to do too is, set a lot of stuff up for the next day.
sure.
Like a lot of stuff that it just kinda set to auto post that, it'll come out the
Yeah,
next day. So what like I said, not everything I know is on this website,
right.
so that I have a lot of that kind of back end, just figuring out maybe who wants their name up there, who doesn't, what other information, it's a lot. So there's a lot of behind the scenes, and I think that's the one thing that I do really work hard to do is like if I hear something, I don't just put it up. If I hear something, I make sure like I'll double and triple check it. Like I don't even look double checking. I want to make sure I get like that third confirmation
Yeah.
before I. And I know there's a lot of like random Twitter guys now who are just jamming stuff up, which you know what? To me, that's actually been such a good thing for us, for HoopDirt, 'cause, like, these random guys, sometimes they hit, a lot of times they miss, no problem. We are HoopDirt, we are who we are.
It's just a credible source, right? I mean, it's
Exactly, like, right, and people, people have told me a lot, like, they kinda know how to read between the lines because sometimes, like, I'll know, like, someone's getting a job, and I'll say, "Oh, sounds like so and so's the leader." Like, if I say "sounds like," that means he got it, So, like,
yeah,
people kinda know how to read between the lines a little bit, and, like, I'm only putting stuff up there that's, like, real and good, and we don't make and I don't guess, you know, and like you said it earlier, like, being first is great, like, if I was happy, "Hey, listen, I broke the West Florida, right? Moving up to Division 1, I got that first, great, I was really happy, but I knew it was right. I'd rather be, like, the 2nd or 3rd guy as long as it's right,
yeah,
people know, kind of come to a credible source, and, I think people are in this thing for a lot of different reasons, I think and I don't know that this is the reason that I started, but now, like, my reason is to help coaches, like,
yeah.
we provide a place where coaches can go and just kinda look and see what happened, you can come on at 5 o'clock at night and just go down and see what happened in the coaching world during the day. You can see the jobs, the news, the dirt, so, rather than, tweet something real quick, I'll get it.
And I love that you always kept it again, like you said, the jobs, the news, the dirt. Like it's not like 15 different things, and you're trying to catch everything and be everything, right? Like this is what it is. So people go in there, they know what they're going to get, which makes it that much easier. And I think honestly, in terms of at least what I've seen with all these different accounts out there, like these different burners, it's like I feel like everyone throws a different name, and then somebody's going to get it right because everybody's throwing a name, and then they'll just keep doing that for every job, and it's like, well, yeah, eventually someone's going to hit, right? Like you said, but what's it matter if you're 1 for 10 or 1 for 20 or whatever? Like, but that's the world though, right? So,
Yeah, no, it is, and then that's why, like, we're I don't consider a competition. We're not scared of competition.
yeah,
But again, I think over the last almost 20 years, which is crazy, 17 years, like I think I built a reputation where people know like our stuff is credible. Just come see it.
right,
We're trying to help coaches. I'm not trying to. I don't care if we beat Rothstein and Goodman on stuff like and we do
yeah.
sometimes. Last night Rothstein took something. I won't say it, but anyway, it's all good. I do think, we really try to provide a service to coaches, so.
Yeah, no, I love that. In terms of the game, with NIL and transfer portal and obviously the growth of search firms, it feels like there's new ones every year with that, or more and more institutions are using them at least. How much different is it to peg somebody for a job where years ago it was like, this guy played Division 1 at Florida. He's got connects in the area, coached AAU here, whatever it was, right? Where you could kind of tag at least 3, 4, 5 names who would probably get an interview or at least a phone interview. How different is that world now, 5, 10 years ago to what it is today?
Oh, it's crazy. It's a whole new world from when we started. I mean, it really is. Back 10 years ago, and again, and the timeline has changed on all of this too because of NIL and portal and all the stuff that's going on, right? In the 10 years ago, your season would end, maybe a coach would get fired, ADs would wait till the Final Four to start meeting with
Sure.
candidates, bring them to campus, because you didn't have the transfer portal and you weren't paying guys, you weren't worried about losing guys. But now, especially with like Zoom interviews, like the process is just sped up so quickly. You fire a guy, 3 days later, they've never even been to campus, but you hire them.
Yeah.
Uh, so, so that being said, it does bring a whole different dynamic. A lot of these schools now, like we talked about earlier, like with bigger staffs, they're kind of being run like NBA organizations. So it does bring, like Michael Malone, for example, it brings NBA guys into play, like Kevin
Hmm.
Young, you. So those guys are, I mean, Ken Michael Malone, not from the North Carolina family, but he's going to run it like a pro organization, and that's how you do it these days. So it is harder to kind of peg who could actually get a job. It's also harder. What I find it's harder to figure out like who's going to get fired. And it's one thing you'll never
Yeah.
see. "Ooh, I'll never publish like a hot seat. I don't know, but just kind of for my own trying to figure out what's next because you know back in the old days, if you had 5 years, maybe you had a year left. Who knows? Now with the portal, you got to win right away.
Hmm.
You're paying guys. Like, it's gotta happen quick. I mean, guys will get fired in 2 or 3 years now, which is crazy, and it's just kinda hard to peg. But it's also on the other side, there's some of the smaller schools that may not be able to afford to fire a guy because their operational, their budget's so big, they can't afford a buyout. So it's just kind of this kind of weird trying to figure out, like, who can afford to fire someone, who can't. It's just a whole new ballgame. It's really hard to peg.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I guess to finish up, and again, I sincerely appreciate your time, honestly, sitting down and kind of going over stuff. How do you get better as a person? Obviously, having a family, running a business, part of me believes that maybe you get better. It's, like you said, you're teaching yourself SEO and you're teaching yourself web stuff, and it's just things that help your business. But like, how do you just get better, on a monthly, weekly, yearly basis, as you're continuing to build Hoop Dirt and spend time with family and manage all that balance and everything?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point is family. I've got 4 kids, and one of the reasons, I was really happy to get out. My first year out of the business was my oldest son's first year playing high school basketball. So I was able to see all of his games, rather than be on the road recruiting someone else's kid on a Friday night. I
Yeah,
was at all my son's basketball games his freshman year. And it's hard. Like I said, I had 4 kids. Then up until that point, I really missed everything.
sure.
I didn't see any of their basketball games as kids growing up because I was gone. So, I think that kinda made me better there being a more present father, and then just kinda understanding that going further, as our kids have grown. I mean, now they're 25, 23, 21, and 15, so they're, like, real people. Oh, but kinda trying to teach them that lesson of, like, I am present, and I wanna kinda teach them, as well. I wanna teach them how to be, people and teach them how to be good people and kinda I also do wanna show them, like, the value of hard work, like, they know that I'm up till all hours. I mean, they know that, and I love them. I do a lot of podcasts and radio and stuff, like, my daughter is right now, she is abroad, and she wanted to talk tonight at 8 o'clock because she needed plane reservations, but you know what? I wanted to talk to you. So
Now I feel really honored having you
yeah,
on here.
but that's what I'm saying, but, like, but you know what?
Yeah,
But they understand kinda like, "Yeah, I'm present, I'm still gonna help you," but,
sure.
like, I got stuff that and so it just kind of, being present and still showing them, hard work.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love the story, and forgot to mention, looking at your bio prior, it seemed like you actually did some media stuff, analyst stuff. It seems like you've always kind of had that side, which again, to me, goes back to that diverse skill set, right? Like never, again, you're going to obviously focus on whatever your main job is and how you're getting paid, but to me, it's always whether it's interests you have or just other skill sets that you can do, right? Like diving into those because you never know what turn in life like that door might open for you, right? I mean, that's so I think it's a really cool story, and honestly, I'd appreciate you jumping on and taking some time here.
Yeah, no, Marcus, thanks for having me. You do a great job. I watched a bunch of your older podcasts, and you have some cool guests, and I think you have the ability to give people like a really good insight into this kind of wild, crazy business. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate letting me share my story, and keep up the good work, man. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, well, same to you. I appreciate you being that, trusted source. Again, I think there's a lot of people out there that obviously now have an idea of who you are, but have always, loved just jumping on there and again, seeing what news is going on, what jobs are available. I mean, again, going back to even the graduate assistants and the young people that are trying to grow in the game, what opportunities are out there. So appreciate you jumping on episode 63 here.
Thank you, Mark.